Here to discuss is former Assistant Attorney General and former White House Deputy Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy, Theo Wold, along with constitutional attorney Don Brown. Good to see you both, gentlemen. Theo, you wrote the executive order to curtail birthright citizenship. How do you think the arguments went this week?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I don't think it's ever good to forecast too much doom and gloom after an oral argument, but I also don't think we should be naive and pretend that it went better than it did. I think, obviously, the three liberal justices came in hardwired against the administration's position, and the chief...
I think we lost him. We're going to try to reestablish him. Don, I'm going to go over to you. The position... Well, the position of the president has received a lot of pushback from the left, but Democrats have made similar arguments in the past. I want you to listen to Harry Reid, who is the minority leader, the Democrat minority leader, back in 1993, what he had to say.
You bet.
If you break our laws by entering this country without permission and give birth to a child, we reward that child with U.S. citizenship and guarantee of full access to all public and social services this society provides. And that's a lot of services.
The liberal justices, as Theo mentioned, in the ACLU are clearly in lockstep, it appeared. How do you assess the way the arguments went?
Well, thank you, Tom. I was able to hear all the arguments, and I think Tom was right before we lost him. It's hard to read a whole lot into and predicting what the court is going to do. The arguments centered around this case from 1898, Wong Kim Ark, which was a case out of San Francisco, and this is what the liberals are pushing. In that case, you had Chinese nationals, and here's the key, though, Tom, who were legal residents of the United States who gave birth to this child. And a lawsuit evolved, and the Supreme Court basically said because they were legal residents, that the child could be a citizen. That is a whole different ball of wax from outright birthright citizenship where you're just born here. You see, so many have parents who are illegal, yet the Democrats, like Harry Reid was doing, tried to drive a freight train through a small hole there. But the fact of the matter is there was still the fairly narrow interpretation that this is an exception to the general rule of no birthright citizenship in the 1940s when the Roosevelt administration started pushing the Democrat position. So I think that the administration's position is correct here. But we'll see what happens.
The Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson made an interesting point, you might say. Listen to this.
I was thinking, you know, I, a U.S. citizen, am visiting Japan. And what it means is that, you know, if I steal someone's wallet in Japan, the Japanese authorities can arrest me and prosecute me. It's allegiance, meaning can they control you as a matter of law?
Don, your reaction to that, and could the court forge some sort of middle ground solution here?
Well, first off, my reaction is Justice Brown Jackson oftentimes leaves me scratching my head with some of her thought processes. But she's talking about allegiance, because when you go back to the, not to be overly technical, but the 14th Amendment itself in the Citizenship Clause says anyone born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction of shall be a citizen. So the court was saying subject to the jurisdiction of means unfettered allegiance. And the Congress, just 2 years before that, in 1866, in attempting to narrow birthright citizenship and reject it, had even stronger language saying anyone born in the United States not subject to a foreign power, ending the notion that you get automatic citizenship. So her analogy doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but it's very clear the congressional intent was to limit citizenship. So you just can't have outright birthright citizenship. The Democrats and the ACLU are arguing the old British rule, which has now changed. British used to have birthright citizenship. They don't anymore, and nobody in Europe does either.
Right, right. So could they also just buck this back to Congress real quick, just yes or no?
Yeah, yes, they could. They could ask Congress to clarify. Congress has power over naturalization under the Article 1. The president enforces in Article 2. They could ask for clarification. They certainly could.
All right.
And that would include a clarification.
Just want to ask you about this one. Yeah, I
Sure,
just
go
want to
ahead.
ask you an exit question. Obviously, a lot of changes over at the Department of Justice this week. Your quick assessment of Pam Bondi's tenure and any thoughts on the succession there?
Well, first off, Pam Bondi's fatally defective flaw was, for whatever reason, an unwillingness or an inability, and I can't tell you what it was, to prosecute these purveyors of lawfare. I think Alvin Bragg, Letitia James should all be prosecuted. They dropped the ball on the prosecution of Jim Comey and Letitia James in the Northern District of Virginia on procedural grounds. To me, that was enough to relieve her. And I think her failure to really go after lawfare is why she's not here. My favorite pick is one who's none of the top three, and that's Jeanine Pirro. The president needs a bulldog on lawfare, and I would love to see her as our next attorney general.
All right, Don Brown, constitutional attorney. Really appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom.